We've lived in the house we're in for almost 10 years, and nothing ever happened until about 3 years ago. The soil our house was built on was destroying the foundation, so the entire basement was totally demolished and rebuilt. I'd always lived on the upper level until we rebuilt the basement. I was in the 6th grade when I moved into my room downstairs. The first time anything happened to me, my older sister had come over to babysit. Ironically enough, we had been watching Ghost Hunters right before I went to bed, which made me wait to tell anyone about what happened for a while, fearing they'd chalk it up to me being freaked out by the show. I'd only been in bed for about 5 minutes when I heard a man's voice right behind my ear say, "Dojo." I thought maybe my dad was home, so I rolled over, but no one was in my room. A second later, I heard the same voice say, "Toe." After that, I turned on my radio, my clock light, and shut my eyes tight. The voice was definitely not coming through the vents. Voices always echo if I hear them that way. A few weeks later, I heard a woman whisper something I couldn't quite make out. Since then, I haven't heard any voices in my room, but I've seen shadows every so often. Since then, we've had more creepy things happen throughout the house. When my sister's house sits while we're away, she always hears voices, and as strange things happen. Most notably, she had a door shut on her hard enough to leave a bruise. Just so you know, there's no draft that could make it move. We've realized recently that most of these things happen whenever we're doing renovations on the house. My parents are presently redoing their closet, so we'll see what happens. I am from Indiana, and I lived here in Tacoma, Washington area for 30 years. I was sleeping in a boiler room under Tacoma Avenue in the basement of the Brant apartment building. I worked there as a painter. I had the room to myself, bars on the only window, 2 doors, one steel door padlocked from the outside, and stick propping the inside. The other led to a room with a civil defense manhole cover and out through a broken down wall, which I had covered with around 8 old doors to keep out the cold. That door to the room I was in was hook locked from the inside. The lights were out, the wind blew cold and hard as the door squeaked open, and the tone of male voices and the sound of soil scratching under their feet moved closer. They lifted the tarp I had over me. I stayed still. Anyway, a dog patted me over and over again. One male voice said, "This is not it." The other said, "Okay," and they left the same way they came in. Slow and creepy, gives me chills. And seeing the door was still latched tight. What a strange room. I won't forget it. I sometimes have nightmares still, though these seem to be getting less frequent. I'm 26, and most of my life I've had heart problems. It got so bad that I was referred to surgery. They needed to fix my problem that was ruining my life. I thought I had to have heart transplant. My father, who died 4 years previously, also suffered from heart issues and died from a very severe heart attack. This only increased my anxiety more, as I genuinely thought I was going to die. On the evening before my surgery, my mother, 2 girlfriends, and myself checked into a hotel closer to the hospital so I could arrive there quickly in the afternoon of the following day. My mother and friends were getting ready for bed, fluffing up pillows, when the hotel room phone rang. I answered as I was nearest, and I answered hello. There was a long silence, and out of the blue, a muffled, familiar-sounding male voice replied with, "Katie, don't go to the hospital tomorrow. Don't get surgery. You are too young to die." Phone cut off, and I dropped it in horror. Not only had I not told anyone, but who was it? How did they know my name? To my mother and friends, they asked what happened. My mother tilted her head and stared at me. It was almost like she knew who it was. My girlfriends just giggled and said, "It was just a prank call." I looked at my mother and asked, "Do you think Dad called me?" Her eyes widened, but I could see her understanding. We decided to all go to bed and shake it off, but I just couldn't. I hardly got any sleep that night. The following morning, my friends began helping by packing some hospital stuff for me, and I suddenly stopped them. I told them and my mother that I didn't want to go into surgery. It was lucky that I didn't, because the following morning, I got a phone call from my close friend Shane telling me someone had died. On the day of my surgery, they were getting heart surgery like I would have got. So, was it really my father on the other end of the line warning me? Whatever it was, it still haunts me to this day. Thanks for saving me, Dad. I've never lived in a haunted house, but my mother did as a teen. Other houses on our street, they had strange things going on too. A few homes away lived a man and his family. One night, one of his daughters went to bed with a really bad headache. The next day, she was dead. She passed away from an aneurysm. After the funeral, the family went away to get their minds off the tragedy, and the father asked my uncle, my mom's brother, to check on their pets. My mom and dad, they were dating then, went with my uncle. My mother had heard there was a grand piano and she wanted to play it, and my dad was studying to be a veterinarian. After entering the house, my uncle and my father headed to the basement to see the animals, and my mother went to the piano on the ground floor. She was playing it when she felt something brush her ankles. She thought a cat must have left the basement and walked past her. She kept playing, and she felt it again. She looked under the piano and saw nothing. When she started again, she felt hands clasp her legs and grab them really tight. She dashed to the basement door, called my uncle and father, and waited for them. When they all walked outside, my uncle could tell my mom was rattled and asked what was wrong. She told him what happened, and he turned pale white. He told her the daughter who died used to play a game with her father. When he'd play the piano, she'd crawl underneath, grab his ankles, and push his feet up and down on the pedals. That was the most horrifying experience ever. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance. It was rig number 12. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never put too much thought into it, and I didn't believe in paranormal stuff. That is until I had my own experience with rig 12. My partner and I were working in a rural community at 3 a.m., and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice, and I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I heard a male's voice say, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. My partner and I sat up straight and looked back into the patient compartment where it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in while we were asleep, so we opened the doors. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles and neither were opened. Let me tell you, we didn't sleep much after that. My neighbor Diane and I had a playful poltergeist for years, and we called it Billy. I come home and find something put in a weird place. Milk in a cupboard, toilet paper in the fridge, laundry detergent in the bathtub. Diane once called to ask if Billy had been around because she couldn't find a gallon of milk. We finally found it outside on her back steps. And the sugar. It seemed like every morning my sugar bowl was empty. When I had enough, I'd point to Diane's home and yell, "Go see Diane." Within 5 minutes, I'd get a call from her and she'd say, "Thanks a lot. because he'd gone and pulled shenanigans at her place. This occurred for the entire 2 years we lived there. No one believed us, not even our husbands. My mother thought someone was stealing from us when we were sleeping or out of the house. My sister believed something was going on, but didn't know what, and I still can't explain any of it. It seems so cliched to start by saying, I don't believe in ghosts, but, however, that's where I'm coming from. A few years ago, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something really strange. The wooden board covering a hole in the ceiling that led to the small attic space lay broken in 2 pieces on the ground. I examined the broken pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken a Bruce Lee to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work in the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought, someone is up there for sure. I emailed pictures to the landlord asking if anyone had been there, with an undertone annoyance since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, please call me as soon as you're able to. I called, and she explained that her last 2 tenants had said the same thing happened. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. I had so many goosebumps. It felt like something was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard the sounds coming from above my bed. It was a dragging sound, like someone pulling a sack of potatoes. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought someone was up there for sure. There is no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I managed to work up the courage to turn on the light and walk to the bathroom. I was armed with a cricket bat. When I looked, I saw the new board covering the hole was broken in 2. I felt very sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard something else whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like a child's voice, and I could hear one sentence repeated over and over. It's your turn. It's your turn. I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try to unwind. My dog, Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I'd never heard him make those sorts of noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car, and waited there until the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The door was open, but I thought I had closed it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, and he wasn't in his crate. I felt sick again, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked in the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was halfway drowned in the bathtub. I took him out, washed him, and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. Oh wow, you heard the whispering too? She said. I stayed in the apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I live elsewhere, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on here. Forget it, it's their problem now. One night when I was 10, I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, followed by someone sitting on my bed. I felt my leg grazed and the bed sink under a person's weight. Thinking it was my mom, I opened my eyes to see an eyeless boy. He had black, empty sockets, about my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand, and in it was a little box. I was startled but reached out. He pulled back. I reached out again and said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone, but the imprint of someone sitting on my bed was present. Fast forward 5 years. My girlfriend came over to do homework. After she finished, she took a nap while she waited for her parents. When they arrived, I tried waking her up. She opened her eyes suddenly, looking up at the corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness, and I explained what she'd done. She said, "Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in like a Spider-Man pose staring at me." I freaked out and I told her my story about the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years. I was the same girlfriend and we had a 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house in my old room. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night, and she'd talk. After a while, I noticed she had almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her once whom she was talking to. She said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and is looking for his mommy." My daughter's nightly conversations continued until we got our own place later that year. Thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Remember, it's scary out there.
Friendly soil. Friendly.